Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. Today's XXL mega story was posted by user LoveBugHugs on our own subreddit r/ripe stories, and it is titled All Over a Few Japanese Cherry Trees. Let me preface what I'm about to tell you with a little background info. I'm retired from health and rescue after over 5 decades. I am now legally blind, but at the time of the following events I still had my vision somewhat intact. Because of health issues, I ended up having to recreate the golden years of my life. I chose to raise trees and parrots. My son lived 1,500 miles away, so I lived alone. A geriatric wheelchair-bound old biddy who chose to live by the beat of my own drum. What I am about to disclose to you is retold using security footage, legal documents, or reconstructed by way of memories, so parts might be a bit cattywonk to what actually occurred, but I assure you, I will attempt to be as close to accurate as possible. Also, I'm on my cell phone. There was a catalyst event that started the following events. I will not disclose what occurred. Safe to say, police were called, warnings were issued to the neighbors in the most strongest wording the police could legally give. That initiating event only seemed to light fires under them. Little did the police or I know, these two wolves were created with DNA that consisted of dynamite, TNT, and nuclear warheads. I was about to learn a lesson of a lifetime, a lesson that was both unwanted and undeserved, but nevertheless a life lesson straight out of the Outer Limits or Twilight Zone. Decades ago, I had purchased acres of lands from a family member. Most lands are grandfathered in under tribal laws, so I started planting on land that just sat untouched. The acres up north were completed, homes fully operational, off-grid, so I focused on acreage here, southern land where the events in this story occurred. The shape of the 40.2 acreage looked like a cooking pot with an S-shaped handle from high above. I had my home built in the eastern/southern corner of the pot. I started planting southern zone trees 18 years ago. Many different fruit and nut trees, and one special tree, an olive tree from God's holy lands of Jerusalem. One day, my tree man contacted me asking if I was interested in purchasing cherry trees from Japan. He warned that there were blue birds chirping about a possible import ban in the near future, so I jumped at that last chance and obtained 2 of them, a male and a female. I thought to myself, where in the holy hell am I going to plant these trees? My acreage was full. So I planted them near my southern home, like one would do for shade on hot summer days. Little did I know that that would be the wisest decision I could have made on many levels. The first season they bloomed, their fragrance could be enjoyed a mile away on a calm wind day. Their blooms proved to be one of the most beautiful things one could see, making them become the showcase of my home. They are the first things your eyes scan to, and you become mesmerized by their enchanting beauty and fragrance. One of the many gifts from God. Throughout the following years, I noticed the female tree would throw babies every 3rd season, sometimes every 2nd. The roots of these saplings could, as they grow, strangle any trees near them, so they had to be uprooted and replanted in free ground. I planted them along the sides of my winding driveway, about a mile long, the S-shaped handle, and along the sides of my home like a gift-wrapped home of cherry blossoms. The land to my left was rocky, soiled lands. The land adjacent to my S-shaped drive east side is still owned by the city and is marked as marshlands. The west side of my property is developed with homes now, but was undeveloped land at the time of this story. So, not earth that one could easily plant on, but some developer bought it and sanctioned it into about 3/4 acre plots and built one home on the most southern plot. Years after this crazy mess ended, that developer built homes on the rest of those plots. When the new homeowners moved in, my years-long nightmare began. I put up chain-linked electric fencing and, unknown to neighbors, full audio-video day and night security cameras because I was having fruits, nuts and vegetables from my garden come up missing the following season they moved in. All hell broke out the following spring, a year I had baby cherry saplings pop up. 9 of them to be exact for that season. I let them grow to a safe replanting age and rolled out in my wheelchair with buckets of water and shovel in hand to get to work. As I was on the ground busy digging up babies, the neighbor, I will call Karen from here on out, came out of her house demanding to know what I was doing. I informed her that I was digging up the saplings to give to the neighbor who lived north of my acreage. She went from 1 to 100 in a tenth of a second, screaming at me about how I couldn't do what I am doing, that the trees belonged to her and I had to give them to her. I informed her that that would not be happening, and this angered her even more, and she advanced towards me spewing verbal vomit and anger. When she put a foot and hands on my fencing, 6 feet of electrified climbing challenge, in what to me was an attempt to climb over, she got the shock of her life, literally. After she regained her breath, her verbal vomit became pathetically comical. I just kept repeating, "My land, my fencing, my property, my trees. I will do as I please, Karen." Her response to being called Karen, "Who is Karen? I'm not Karen. Stop calling me Karen." I quickly grew tired of this tornado of spinning verbal vomit, put my shovel into the earth upright, using it to upright my body and climb back into my chair, grabbed the bucket that had a few saplings and yelled, "Bye bye Karen." As I was waiting for my wheels to engage, I watched Karen go back into her house and I went into mine. About 30 minutes later, I had my parrots screaming, someone was ringing my bell and knocking. My camera showed 3 police officers. When I answered and asked what I could do for them, they informed me that they received complaints that I stole trees and assaulted someone a little while ago and if I knew anything about it. I said, "Follow me," and rolled them to the saplings I still needed to uproot. They asked me if I was planting them. I said, "No, I am digging them up so they don't murder each other." They asked, "Where are the trees you are accused of stealing?" I rolled them to my work shed where I placed the buckets and explained how I had to uproot the babies because their roots strangle each other. They then asked me to take them to where the supposed assault happened. I rolled them back to the saplings in the ground, pointed to the fence line and said, "There." They asked where. Clearly they were confused. At this time, Karen ran around and started her verbal vomit again. Both cops tried to get her to calm down and return to her home, to no avail. They called for backup. After what seemed like an eternity of ear-shattering, nauseating verbal vomit from her, she was manhandled into submission by 4 of our finest men in blue and pulled back into her home. The 2 cops with me asked if I could try to be a little more clear as to what had occurred because she was clearly incensed in anger. I asked the cops to not believe a word I say. Both cops eye-bugged out of their sockets and their mouths dropped to the ground. Because in any argument there are always 3 sides. Her side, my side, and the truth. They both quickly said, "Okay, what exactly is the truth?" Almost in unison. Without saying a word, I pulled myself from my wheelchair pocket, pulled up my security archives app, narrowed in on the time in question, put the cell on speaker with volume turned up to the maximum, and pushed play and handed the cell to them. When they got to the point where I started addressing Karen as Karen, they both started gut laughing and one asked if I was a Reddit reader. I said, "Sometimes, mostly YouTube." I then pulled up county land titles and deeds and showed them my property lines, how my fence line was 15 feet inside my property lines for easements in case of emergencies to allow emergency vehicles. Because fire is a real threat to lives and the livelihoods of people. I then pulled up the receipts, import/export clearance documents and clear description of the Japanese cherry trees, making sure they noticed my name, my address, my signature of receipt and dates and times. One cop walked back to their car and the other one explained my rights to have her trespassed, to which I said yes. He then said he will file trespassing on her and explained to her she could be criminally charged should she continue her abusive activities. He then walked to his car and I wheeled to the front of my home and watched them talk with each other on my cell using my live audio and video surveillance app. After a short while one of the cops that was in Karen's house came out and walked up to them, and they continued talking while one of them was writing on a clipboard. Two of them then walked back into Karen's house. Very quickly after, I could hear Karen's verbal vomit permeate the air with a vile, nauseating green haze of disgusting epitaphs. And by the way guys, isn't an epitaph something that you write on the gravestone of a dead person? Maybe I am wrong here. Anyway, then as quickly as the verbal assaults began, a calming, peaceful quiet crystallized in the air as if to try cleansing it with a touch of serenity. I guess I had forgotten to breathe because I was shaken out of my fog by one of the cops who was tapping my shoulder, asking me to breathe and if he should call for paramedics. I smiled, shook my head no. He then told me if I have any more issues with her, to call him. He placed his card in my hand, explaining about his phone number and case number, and then asked me to forward him a copy of my security footage relating to that complaint. He then told me that he loved the part where I called her Karen. I shook my head affirmatively, shook his hand, thanked him, and then we parted ways. By then I was exhausted, so I went inside to eat an early supper and planned for an early retire and finish the sapling work in the morning. I called my back 40 neighbor and told her I would roll by her way tomorrow, and she said she would just meet me at the fence and use her hook line to pull the bucket over the fence. Cool beans, that plan suited me just fine, saving me having to roll a 15-mile round trip. As I was eating my supper, about 2 hours after the afternoon's crazy circus show, someone started pounding my front door as if trying to wake all the dearly departed within a 50-mile radius. Security cameras showed Karen and her husband, known as Kevin from here on in, at my door screaming, "I know you're in there, come out here now." More pounding while I was on the phone with the cop from earlier, herein known as Zeus the All-Powerful. He could barely make out what I was saying over the pounding at the door and the parrot's scream of fear. Minutes later, I could hear sirens on my security feeds. Moments later, 6 officers surrounded my front door, and after a few minutes they were able to de-escalate the anger that permeated the air into thick pea soup. An officer, known as Prince Valiant from here on out, called me on my cell asking if I wanted to trespass Kevin, to which I gave him a resounding yes. I watched on the surveillance feed as the cops took them down my drive. My gate was closed and locked, so the poor cops had to climb over the gate. I later rectified that by having an electric current fed through the south fence and gate, and had an emergency gate opener installed so I could open it from my house or code box at the gate. Cameras at the south gate were very blurry. Seems Kevin or Karen sprayed something on them, but the audio was still crystal clear. Cops gave Karen a trespass charge and trespassed Kevin. Karen earned her first trip to have a cozy meet and greet with the judge, and I planned to be a visitor for that. After everyone was gone, I called my back 40 neighbor's husband if he could mosey on over after dinner to clean my cameras before sunset in exchange for a basket of fruits, their choice. It is good to have great neighbors who are kind and giving of their time and elbow grease. The next morning I resumed my sapling uprooting. Karen came out to offer reruns of her verbal vomiting, her Karenisms, and her mental gymnastics of pure rage and craziness. It was then I confirmed in my mind that this Karen was a special kind of Karen, a narcissistic sociopath, who lived in some altered reality that consisted of unicorns, rainbows, and minions of monkeys who were at her every beck and call. And by the way guys, since this is a pretty long story, we will have a short break here because I wanted to ask you if you are aware of the TV show called Dexter. As some of you might know, it is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and recently, thank God, the final season of the TV show came out. So in case there are any other Dexter fans in the audience who were not aware, please watch the new season. It is absolutely amazing. Anyway, if you have watched until here and enjoy the stories about crazy neighbors, then I would really appreciate it if you could post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance, and now let's continue with the story, continuing with the unicorns and rainbows. I finished the last sapling and pulled myself to my chair to put all saplings into one bucket. While I was calling back for the neighbor to meet me at the north corner, I rolled past Karen. She started screaming at me, demanding I hand over her trees. I told her, "Karen, we went over this yesterday." "What is your mental malfunction, Karen? They are not your trees. I promised them to my friend, not you." I made my way to the back for the neighbor, who asked me what was going on. While I was explaining to her the preceding day's circus show of crazy, our finest in blue rode up to us on the eastern easement, seemed Karen called and made a second complaint against me for stealing trees. Only that time I had supposedly taken monies from her in exchange for the saplings. This cop knew nothing of the prior day's events, so the three of us viewed the security feeds of 50 Shades of Crazy. It's a great movie, people, hilarious with healthy helpings of aggravation and exasperation. My poor neighbor just kept shaking her head, and I told the cop that Karen needed a pretty new white jacket with extra long sleeves with pretty ties that can put gorgeous bows on her back. The cop snickered. I added Karen should either also get a long timeout in a pink room or a cool bouncy room, extra padded, because Karen was that extra special kind of Karen. The poor cop lost it with that. I have a special kind of cruel and back for the neighbor gets me, and my very dry sense of humor. After the poor cop regained his composure, he told us he was all over this. This cop will herein be known as Copper Bean in reference to the British funny man Mr. Bean. Mrs. Beck-40 and I chatted for a while longer. We arranged a time for her to come over to pick fruits and stop by for tea, and then we parted ways as I had workmen due to arrive to restyle my south fence and gate. God bless the men who can weld steel into beautiful masterpieces of gatework. After the electrician's fenceman and his workmates finished up, I invited them up to my house for a quick barbecue of burgers and a salad from my garden. Our late lunch was disturbed by a barrage of screeching that broke our sounds of silence, shattered the stratosphere, and gave the angels above some heavenly hearty laughter. Apparently, Karen had gotten her hands on a megaphone. I called 911 on emergency. Funny thing is, that time I didn't have to say a single word, but I could hear the 911 operator tell me that she is sending the squad back out there. Poor Copper Bean would be given a repeat performance of the movie 50 Shades of Crazy. Poor Copper. Karen earned another meet and greet with the judge and a couple more charges of breach of peace and harassment of a disabled elderly person. We offered poor Copper Bean a burger and tea. He took us up on our offer and called in for a 20-minute break. We had a too short lovely respite that ended all too sudden as poor Copper was called back into service. He thanked us, chucked his tea and grabbed his burger and run. I told the workers, "Welcome to my life," a never-ending soap opera entitled As the Crazy Circus Turns. They heartily laughed. Good men, they get me. They thanked me, packed up, and did one last test on the gate before they left. All was quiet on the eastern wall fence, but we all know that hair-raising, fear-evoking old adage, it's always calmest before the storm, don't we? Well. On a Saturday morning, I was out pulling veggies from my garden. I heard a faint hissing sound I couldn't make out, and next thing I knew, I was being punched and beaten. There was no way I could fend off the blows from fists coming at me from multiple directions. The blows seemed to never end. When I awoke, it was evening, my chair was on top of me, and I was laying in curdled puddles of blood. My blood. I tried finding my cell phone. It was at my side with the screen shattered. I dialed 911, but I couldn't talk. It was garbled. Zeus and his partner showed up along the eastern wall. I heard them calling my name. I started screaming. It was all I could do. I guess they called fire because after a short while I could hear more sirens. I texted Zeus the code to open Southgate. They found me, my saviors, my angels in human bodies. I will spare you readers all the gore and simply say I ended up with my jaw broken in 3 places, 7 broken ribs, a punctured lung, a concussion, a lacerated liver, as well as other soft tissue and organ injuries, major black eyes along with a broken arm. I weed red for weeks, my body looked like a patchwork painting in hues of white, black, purple, blue and crusted browns. I looked the pretty picture. Zeus and Prince Valiant visited me after I arrived back home from the hospital. We talked, a difficult venture for me as my jaw was still wired shut, about what happened. I had signed my statement while in the hospital and they took copies of the security footage. Turns out, Kevin sprayed paint on what he thought were all the cameras facing me at the time of the attack. He didn't know about the cameras in the fruit trees and along the western wall. Kevin never laid a fist on me, but 3 men pummeled me while Kevin watched and laughed, calling out blows as if he was a spectator at a WWE fighting match. Kevin is married to the right woman, they are both that special kind of crazy. Kevin earned a pair of shiny new bracelets, we all know how movie stars just love their bling, as well as free 4-star accommodations after his photo shoot for his starring role in the movie 50 Shades of Crazy, as well as his recurring role in the soap opera As the Crazy Circus Turns. Kevin got out of jail on bail while awaiting trial. Investigators were busy finding the 3 beasts from Hades. I told the investigators to search Kevin and Karen's friends, associates and family members because I had never seen them before. Well. Investigators do what investigators do oh so well. Weeks later they found them. Turns out they were Kevin's 3 younger brothers. All I can say? Kevin's family tree grows nothing but rotten worm-ridden sour bitter apples. Arrest warrants were issued and forwarded 5 states over. They were picked up in their home state and issued their own sets of bling and given photo shoots and 4-star accommodations of their own with promises of free vacations when travel plans were made. Extraditions to my state. Well, I assumed Kevin didn't like that we, the police and I, gave his brothers their own starring role in this crazy soap opera and movie. The night Kevin's brothers were given their bling, my security cameras caught Kevin and Karen going shopping on my land. I called the brave boys in blue. They came up dark, no lights or sirens. Putting in that code box at the south gate turned out to be a blessing, and the drama play Kevin and Karen put on in my backyard was priceless. I popped my corn, sat back and was entertained, or well, rather I was mesmerized by the pure audacity and entitlement of the case. Their impromptu acting was chock full of gut-splitting jocularity at its finest. I remember thinking that I needed to plan for an Emmy Awards show because they both certainly earned one that night. A mix of Laurel and Hardy and Monty Python. The play was truly a sight to be seen, 4 cops chasing 2 rather rotund people around as they were throwing their ill-gotten gains at the poor officers. Truly a food fight of gargantuan proportions. As all plays do, this one came to a European end. After the bling was passed out and the curtain fell, the 2 Ks were taken for photo shoots and given spa treatments to wash off all the food stuck on them, and they were given their 4-star accommodations and invitations to visit the judge. 8 days after the special K-Food Fight Festival, I was suddenly jarred awake to the thunderous sounds of engines roaring, earth shaking pounding, and the fingernail on chalkboards screeching of metals on metal loud enough to wake the slumbering angels in the heavens above. I called the police, and by that time I had 911 on speed dial. I later found out the back 40s had also called in the boys in blue. Karen's 2 brothers were caught red-handed in their trucks with oversized tires to make up for what they seemed to lack between their legs, chains attached to their tow hitches. The other ends of those chains were attached to what was left of my mangled fencing. Several poles were pulled out of the ground and the chain link more resembled silver ramen noodles that were poured in a pile on the ground. Sparks were flying everywhere, it looked like the 4th of July. These 2 brothers turned out to be a special kind of stupid, attaching metal chains to a metal truck and then attaching the chains to an electric source. Really? I shut off the power grid to the fencing, and the ramen noodle chefs were given their own bling and 4-star accommodations. Okay folks, if you've been keeping up on your head count, we are up to 7. I thought to myself, just how bad can this soap opera movie get? Little did I know, oh how little did I know, how naive I was. I still had a lot of learning to go to find out just how deep this crazy rabbit hole went. While I was busy having my security fencing rebuilt and fortified, I was waiting with eager anticipation for my day to shine in court. I was jolted out of my euphoric haze by a constant buzzing and knocking at my door. My security fencing was still under repair. Security cameras showed a couple sheriff's deputies awaiting my response. When I opened the door, they informed me that they had an arrest warrant for me and I would be going with them. They told me to stand up and not fight them. When I tried to explain to them that I had been wheelchair bound for about a decade by then, they told me that they were informed I was faking for sympathy. And they pulled me out of my chair. When I crumbled to the floor, and the look of shock and embarrassment on their faces was almost worth what I was going through. They spent the next 3 hours trying to figure out how they were going to transport me and my 1,000-pound wheelchair. They ended up transporting me using a folding wheelchair that they cuffed my hands to. After my own photo shoot, great pictures, I asked for a dozen super glossies of my best side pose, I was processed and told I was being arrested for grand theft, filing false police reports, multiple charges of harassment and intimidation. I used my one phone call to my lawyer. This was a whole new level of crazy. I will spare you people the long, boring legal quagmire my lawyer pulled me out of and just give you the juicy aftermath. According to what investigators and my lawyer were able to piece together, Karen's sister, who happened to work for the county court's office, pushed through falsified fraudulent police reports to have the county's prosecutor file formal charges against me. The grand theft was built on lies that I had stolen all the Japanese cherry trees on my land, and by then I had 72 of them. They claimed each tree was worth about $550. I was accused of stealing $30,600 in trees. I was accused of harassing their family members by making false accusations and false police reports. The family of crazy, both Karen and Kevin's families were all listed on the complaint against me. Mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters, they filed an $11 million suit against me. They each were asking for $1 million in damages. Effin' crazy outrageous. As the truth came out, Karen's sister used a gullible judge to sign the arrest warrant. And now, the fallout. It took a little over 2 years to get my legal woes fixed and my record expunged. See the preface for my reasons why this was especially important to me. Over another year and a half later, Karen, her sister and Kevin agreed to plead guilty to lesser charges and served 6 months. Because of 4 children under the age of 7, 11 years and 6 years respectively. Karen's sister was fired by the very same judge she snowballed. Karen's 2 brothers served 5 years each and ordered to pay me $50,000 each in restitution. Kevin and Karen were ordered to pay me $25,000 each in restitution for the loss of foods they used in that colossal food fight. Kevin's 3 brothers each received 25 to life on felony assault of age-disabled people with grievous bodily harm and ordered to pay $250,000 restitution each. My lawyer had his payday when he countersued both families. We settled for $3 million. My lawyer took 1/3. I ended up with 5 of the 6 homes that used to belong to the 3 main family units, as well as cash, stocks, bonds and jewelry. All parties involved in this nightmare were each given permanent stay-away orders to not come within 1,000 yards of my person or property. Everyone received 8 to 10 years probation with notices that their original charges, except Kevin's 3 brothers who were prosecuted on all original charges, would be refiled and prosecuted. Double jeopardy doesn't apply because they pled guilty on different lesser charges should they fail to meet every stipulation of original sentencing. Mr. and Mrs. Beck 40 came for a visit after things calmed down. We reminisced the past 5 years' crazy crap show. Mr. Bag 40 gave me 2 grams, he said were for the trees and all the fruit and veggies I've given them over the decades. Mrs. Bag 40 said to spend it on an indulgence I wouldn't normally spend on. These two are great people, I will miss living near them. I promised I would try to keep our community peaceful from then on, but I seem to be a magnet for crazy. We laughed, shared a great steak and lobster barbecue, and sipped mint juleps as the sun went down. Truly great people. Then Hurricane Irma hit. As of this writing, I have officially sold off everything and I'm relocating to somewhere with hopefully less crazy residents. My lesson to share with you readers: throughout all of this nightmare I was always confused as to how people could become so crazy. Then I, one day, had a light bulb moment. I finally understood where my confusion was coming from. Confusion, the anger created when one's mind overrides the body's basic desires to pummel the living ghost out of some a-hole who desperately deserves it. Stay frosty, my friends, there really are crazy people out there. Added to answer all the PMs, obviously my recounting of these events that occurred are abridged. There was a myriad more things that were said and myriads more events that occurred. I, for my own reasons, chose to include the events shared above. Obviously, life in a small city will be different from what happens in larger, more populous cities, so it is never wise to compare how each local government reacts or responds to any situation. The same can be said for judges and law enforcement agencies. I didn't post this for votes, I was asked by a YouTuber, aka me guys, to write a comment I had made on his channel into a story to share what happened to me. I wrote the parts I am willing to publicly share in hopes that it might help someone who finds themselves in a similar situation cope, deal with and navigate through their own situation. I pray you find peace. And wow, Ripe Stars, that was really a roller coaster of absolute craziness. I really cannot even imagine what OP went through. This is probably one of the most insane stories I have ever read on Reddit. Thank you very much for sharing this. And Ripe Stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional Ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support and I hope to see you again tomorrow.